welcome to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
And this week, we watched a piece of shit. Fuck, God. Hang on, let me retry that. This week, we watched an absolute dumpster fire. God damn it. I can't say it. Do you want to take this?
Yeah. So this week, we watched The American Death Note, released onto Netflix. A movie about not Timmy Turner using the Green Goblin to murder ISIS leaders.
It's garbage. It's garbage.
It's pretty bad. But you know what? Let's clarify a few things. I, Jackson Keller, despite being a weeaboo, have never read or watched the original Death Note. Haven't watched the anime, haven't read the manga. Pretty much the only thing I know about the original is the Keikaku meme, the one where they're making fun of fan subs by saying, just according to Keikaku, translator's note, Keikaku means plan. So that's all I know about Death Note. Only thing, I suggested this, we do this episode partially for that reason, because as I understand it, Sean, you're pretty intensely familiar with the original?
Yes, I read the original series when I was about 13 to 15, somewhere in that range, as one does when they come across Death Note and they're 13 to 15 and think it's going to be edgy and awesome. At the time, I absolutely did think it was edgy and awesome. And in preparation for this episode, I did actually start to reread it, and I'm currently in the process of it. I'm about halfway through the entire series. And I still agree that it is very, very good and very, very compelling. My opinion of some of the characters has changed just because I have a little bit more of a balanced worldview other than edgy, smart guy is cool because he's cool. So I have a little bit more of an appreciation for the nuance of the series, less of the grim darkness of it. So I did come into this with a little bit more of a vendetta, with a little bit more anger. We should also clarify that before we start talking about this, we both do have a love of schlocky, shady movies.
Oh, you sit me down. I'm a full proponent of the idea that the worst kind of movie is a mediocre, boring one. Like, you give me bad, but bad in extravagant ways, I will enjoy that almost more than an actual good movie.
Yeah, we've both seen, like, The Room, Birdemic, all those movies multiple times. It is required viewing of anyone new we meet. We are that type of person. We are the type of people who waste our time watching terrible movies because they're way too enjoyable to not waste our time watching.
We're animals, basically.
Yeah. Savages looking to rip apart the next piece of rotted carcass that's thrown our way. With that in mind, let's talk about why this movie is a train wreck, but kind of incredible at the same time.
Yeah, and I think the use of the word edgy is appropriate, even though you were referring kind of to your attitude towards the original, because there was a part of me as a neophyte, as someone not into the whole Death Note thing, that I legitimately enjoyed. A lot of this movie was dumb schlock, but there were parts of it that I legitimately enjoyed. I think mostly I liked L's character. I thought he was weird and fun, and I thought that actor was giving a pretty good performance, pretty engaging and compelling. And I also loved for the whole minute and a half that he's on screen, Willem Dafoe as Ryuk, just an absolute joy watching him cackle like the Green Goblin. Great stuff.
Yeah, if you've missed the Green Goblin from the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, don't worry, he's back.
Oh, back with a vengeance. So yeah, I think that there are some things that the movie has to offer, but also I think part of me kind of legitimately enjoyed it because it did reach out to that edgy teen that didn't entirely die. I feel like if I had watched this movie when I was 14 or 15, I would have just been no holds barred, just completely into it. It's too bad for me to say that now. There's too much shit. The main characters are awful. And the tone and writing are garbage. There was a small part of me that wasn't entirely pointing and laughing. You know, a lot of it was that. But, you know, I figured I'd fess up to that up front. I will say that this was a much more enjoyable movie than something like the American Ghost in the Shell remake, which I also saw and was just probably one of the worst movies I've ever seen in theaters. Just an absolute, like, lifeless slog. What I was talking about with kind of that middle ground, mediocre movie.
Compare it to Transformers 2, which you almost walked out of.
Yes, exactly. The fun fact about me, Transformers 2 Revenge of the Fallen is the only movie I ever considered walking out of. The only reason I didn't is because I was 14 years old and couldn't drive. No, so this wasn't...
We have a high tolerance for shitty movies, is what we're saying here.
Pretty high tolerance. The other thing that I sort of kept in mind while watching this is that I'm not one of the people who thinks that it's automatically a bad idea to try and adapt anime to the screen or try and adapt it in like a Western way. And I think it depends on the property. Like for Ghost in the Shell, it was stupid and pointless in particular. But for this, I think just based on the way American culture is, the weird issues that we have with violence like across the board, I think you could make a smart American version of Death Note, but I think it would have benefited more from like an Alfred Hitchcock approach, where you take kind of like the basic premise maybe, and then basically have a wacky auteur director do what he wants with it, as opposed... It
also would have benefited from not being an hour and a half.
Yeah, it would have benefited from that too. I mean, I think that kind of goes... As a not anime watcher, the pacing didn't feel too off to me. I think the beginning was really rushed. Once it kind of clicked into place, it never really bothered me. Didn't feel like they were compressing too much.
Well, let alone pacing. The problem with doing something a little bit more advanced, something that you could take the base idea of what Death Note is and turning it into something a little deeper with a little bit more meaning for an American audience, I think you would need either plan to make like a couple hour-long episodes of it, or to have it be a longer movie to allow it to fully flesh out. As it was, I think the hour and a half that it had didn't do enough, wouldn't have allowed for enough opportunity to fully flesh out this idea that, you know, there is things to be said. I think it was too short and it would have been too rushed no matter who was behind the helm and what they were trying to say.
Possibly. I think definitely it could have stood to be a full 2 hours at least. I don't know if it needed to be a full miniseries, especially if they are going to shed, like kind of drop the pretense of adapting the specific details and well-known stuff of the manga, which seems to be part of the problem. Was that, you know, speaking from the outside, just from talking to you, it seems like they really half-assed it in that regard. Didn't fully do a new thing, didn't fully do the old thing. So I think if they were fully doing a new thing, I mean, that it would require some economical writing, but I think you could make like a smooth, around this time frame again, maybe a little bit longer, but I think you can make like a smooth, like smart thriller just with this premise. I don't think it would need tons more room to breathe unless you were going to include more of the stuff from the anime, in which case then yeah, it probably needs to be a miniseries, but that's kind of neither here nor there. The film we have is the film we have, and oh boy.
And it is none of the above. Before we really jump into the way Death handles, I'm going to kind of give a quick backstory on my thoughts when I finished it as someone who is familiar with the series, which is mainly that I hated it for being Death Note, but the fact that it was Death Note is almost what made it enjoyable, because it took such a serious and well thought out, well crafted series and broke it down to being the most schlocky bullshit I could think of, that kept me quite literally laughing incredibly hard through the whole thing. I was surprised that our neighbors didn't come over and pound on the door, because I was guffawing like a fucking idiot the entire time. It was ridiculous. And that's what made it really enjoyable, especially knowing that it was once a great seminal piece of manga history, essentially. So to see it turn into this was something else entirely. So now that we have an understanding on kind of where Jackson and I both come from and our overview on how we thought of the movie, let's take that moment and shift gears, and let's start talking about who died in Death Note. And shocker, people died in this movie. It's called Death Note. So I don't think we're really going to end up focusing on any particular deaths this time. So there won't be any serious spoilers, but I mean, obviously we're still going to be talking about the end of the movie and whatnot. So expect some spoilers, to say the least.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the whole thing. Because part of the problem, I think, is that it feels like for a movie about death called Death Note, really only one major named character dies, and she dies at the end. Everything else is kind of a near miss or a fake out, so it's sort of difficult to go into the individual deaths with this movie, because so many times it's just like a mook in like a machine as part of there weren't that many plans in this movie. Not too many keikakus, not according to Keikaku.
No, there was literally no plans.
Well, there was one.
Okay. Okay.
We'll talk about that because that was an incredibly stupid element that on paper maybe could have worked. But I think you'll agree with me when I say it's maybe a little, not only easier, but a little more fruitful to talk about death as a pattern in this movie more so than like an individual like character analysis like we usually do.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be much more in reference to the media and society, as well as kind of, I'm going to make some callbacks to the source material. I'm gonna not spoil anything from that just because you might not have read it. Go read it or watch it. It's well worth your time, as opposed to this, which is worth your time only if you like really bad movies.
The kindest thing I can say about the Netflix Death Note in sincerity is that it did make me want to watch a better version of it, and the better version of it exists. It's called, the manga and the anime. So,
and it's also available on Netflix, I should add.
Yeah, exactly. So mission accomplished in a weird way, I guess. But kind of the biggest problem with the movie, tied into death, I think, are our main characters. Light Turner, and if you want to talk about terrible decisions, it's, referring to this blonde-haired white boy with American actors as Light, like as his actual name in complete seriousness. It's totally ridiculous. So Light Turner and Mia, whatever her last name was.
I don't think they were given a last name for her.
Yeah, I don't remember. So they're really bad, and there's a lot of interesting themes you can do with an American Death Note. This movie doesn't really address any of them in favor of going for this weird, edgy teen murder romance.
As I was watching it, it's kind of like Death Note meets Twilight in a weird way, but it also kind of feels like one of those not another teen movie type parodies at the same time. It misses some marks, is what I'm getting at.
Oh, so many marks. And I think basically you can boil down the problems with both characters to being that Light is a total dumbass and that Mia is hilariously psychotic. In the opening scene of the movie, right after Light makes his first kill, right after the Death Note falls out of the sky in a really like tone-setting way, like really over the top, like slow motion. Like you know instantly what you're in for when you see that.
Give
scene.
me a couple Dutch angles in there too. Just really make sure that I know what I'm in for. Just set that mood right and let me know I'm gonna be angry through
it. Yeah. So after that first scene, we get a moment where Light puts this typical like 80s teen movie bully's name into the Death Note. and he wants him to be decapitated. And what occurs after that is so glorious. It's so funny. It's so fun. It's like this Rube Goldberg machine of, like, the universe has to, like, twist itself to decapitate this kid. So, like, the milkman will, like, drop a milk bottle, and that'll roll into the street, where, like, a dog will lick the milk, and then a man will try to, like, dive out of, like, not avoid, like, running over the dog, and, like, the car will run into a pole, and the pole will do all this shit, and it ends with the ladder decapitating him. And it's really gory and really, really great.
Have you seen a Final Destination movie? You know exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's genuinely enjoyably insane to watch. But you could also just go watch a Final Destination movie.
My favorite actually was the second of these. I wish there were more of these in the movie, because there's kind of only 3. Like, this is where the movie feels like more genuinely fun, and, like, even if it is just like a Final Destination movie, like, it's like reducing it to a horror comedy like this. I mean, that would have been a hell of a decision, certainly, based on the source material. But, like, those are the moments where I felt like, that's probably where I felt like I was laughing at it the least. Like, I was just genuinely enjoying the slapstick. My favorite was the second one, where, like, the waiter, like, trips over the salt and does a really over the top, like, whoa, and, like, stabs the guy, and, like, forces the guy to stab himself.
Here's the part that I'm not sure on, though, was it supposed to be slapstick, or was it supposed to be taken as serious? Because I got a very serious vibe from it when I was watching it. So I was absolutely laughing straight in its face. I don't know if it was slapstick is the problem.
I don't know. I mean, the tone in this movie is very weird, and it felt like there were moments where it was trying to be funny on purpose. And strangely, and I mean, this is a bad choice from the get-go, considering both of those deaths that I mentioned are very important ones. It's like, the start on Light's journey to become an edgelord for the first one, and the second one is like him getting revenge for his dead mom, which is, of course, the most generic thing you can possibly do for a motivation. So I think the way the scenes were filmed, it felt almost intentional to me. But then the broader context was just so wrong. Like, these are supposed to be serious moments, and especially at the end. And I guess what we're talking about with these over-the-top deaths, like, we may as well talk about the plan. The only time the movie tries to do the Death Note Keikaku thing.
Tries to be Death Note.
Yeah. There's the really funny scene, and like this and this scene, like the earlier two, I felt like I was kind of laughing with it, maybe. This last one I was laughing at it, because the choice of music is really ludicrous. There's like a Ferris wheel that falls apart, and it ends with Mia falling to her death, and yeah, and like that's your big climax of the movie, is that the setup is that Mia wants the Death Note for herself because Light's too much of a dumbass and he's ineffectual. So she's gonna take it from him because, and she's kind of forced his hand by putting his name in the note and saying he's gonna die at midnight, because if you burn a page, it will erase, it'll erase whatever, but you can only burn one page. So if Light gives her the book, she's gonna erase his page, maybe. So then Light makes this scheme involving this like pedophile doctor. Like they're all like people that, because Light in this version spends the entire movie trying to only kill criminals, which is also weirdly out of character considering he spends like a quarter of it trying to kill L. But he looks up in like the school library at homecoming, like tic-tacs on the computer, to find out like which people in the area were like bad people and he would feel okay killing, and he could temporarily like mind control to do his bidding. So like he concocts this complex scheme that ends with his page in the Death Note falling into a literal trash fire, and Mia falling to her death in a bed of flowers in a really over the top ridiculous way. Well,
it's just American Beauty. It's just American Beauty.
Yeah, there you go. Nice and succinct. And the Ferris wheel that crumbles, and it's hilarious, and it feels really stupid as the finale, but you don't know that, like, this is his scheme, this is his plan, until after, when he's, like, explaining it. And this is what I'm sort of on board with. My problem with Light isn't that he is not, like, anime Light, because, I haven't seen the anime, even though, just from what little I know on it, it's painfully obvious that they didn't even come close. I don't mind that they tried to make, like, a new teenage edgelord character and give their own interpretation on it. What I mind is the fact that, like, he's so stupid as to be, like, completely unsympathetic, and by the time he does something smart, we had already seen it play out, and it looked ridiculously stupid and convoluted. So it doesn't feel like a really satisfying, like, payoff to this, like, good scheme. It just feels like they bandaged over something stupid and justified it afterward. And I almost kind of like the idea of, like, he starts off as, like, a dumbass kid, but maybe, like, he kind of grows into the Light from the anime. But the problem with that is that
requires actual growth?
That requires actual growth. That's the only time in the movie. It just, like, he spends the whole movie being a dumbass, even up until the very end, where, like, he, like, whines that, the condition he writes in the note for Mia's death is that she'll only die if she takes the note from him. And then she does, and he's like, no, I thought you were going to pick me! And, like, it's so stupid, and he looks so dumb, and we didn't ever have those scenes of him, like, starting to concoct a good plan, like, maybe getting sidetracked, because everything he did was stupid. Like, right before he was ready to strike a deal with Elle, like, he was, like, crying about, like, please make it stop, like, don't shoot me.
It's absurd. It's terrible, and I do my best. I've watched every Marvel movie that's come out in the past whatever number of years, and I've read the comics as a kid, and I do my best to try and keep the source material and the movie separate as much of my ability, because I think that's owed to the movie. It might be doing something different, or it might be trying something new. The problem is I couldn't do it for this one, and all I could do was hate this character because he just whined the entire time and killed people for no reason and had no intelligence anywhere, and it's shown through the entire time from start to finish, from the people he kills to the fucking bizarre plan at the end. And the plan at the end is totally a manga light plan. Like, it is straight out of the manga, batshit insane. But it's so undeserved that you just hate him more for it. Like, so I'm gonna do a quick bit of manga comparison here, and I'm only really gonna focus on the way we deal with death in this movie and the manga. In the manga, the first people that Light kills is not some sort of bully, is not some sort of revenge plot or anything. He looks at the bigger picture from the get-go. He's never this petty, which annoys me from the get-go, because this is just whiny and petty and like, I'm gonna kill that bully because he was mean to people. And yeah, is that a shitty thing to do? Absolutely. Should you bully people? Don't bully people. Don't bully people, kids. That's the message of today's episode. But it doesn't mean that you deserve to die, and it doesn't mean that Light, this cold, calculating individual, is going to choose you to die first. Sorry. I know that's not really consequential to the movie and is more just a pet peeve on why this movie sucks from a standpoint of someone who's come from the manga, but it needed to be said because I'm angry about it.
Well, and it gets into other aspects of why his character fails to work, because it isn't just the fact that he's stupid. I mean, the fact that he's stupid is bad. Like, the fact that one of his first kills is someone that he shows to Mia to, like, get her all hot for him weirdly, like, out of nowhere. Like, they don't even know each other. It's not like they're, like, dating or, like, she's got, like, hots for him.
Only thinks with his goddamn boner. It's miserable.
It's so bad. Like, actual teenage boys do not make this many stupid decisions while horny, and that is saying a lot.
Listen, we both went through this. We understand it. Like, this is not like, I would assume that as a teenage boy, you would take the time, if you are horny, you will give the woman the book and let her see who you are killing. No. You still have overwhelming anxiety and nerves. Because the hot girl talks to you, you're not going to turn on and be like, watch this, I can kill people. Because you know what? They're going to think you're a psychopath.
Unless it happens to be Mia, the greatest psychopath ever known in this universe, in which case, like, she immediately takes the reins and is like, yeah, let's make all these wacky plans. So, yeah, a lot of his targets are stupid because he's stupid, but that's not all. The other problem with this character is that the movie then wants us to get us to sympathize with this idiot. Like, it's one thing to have a stupid character where, like, their stupidity is, like, their own downfall. It's, like, illustrating a point. Like, The Wolf of Wall Street is like that. And, this movie ain't no Martin Scorsese. It's... What we have here is, like, Light kind of, like, whinging around and, like, really being like, no, like, we're not gonna kill innocent people. Like, it's all part of the plan. Like, don't do the bad things, Mia. Like, it wants us to be invested in, like, this battle for Light's soul. But we hate him. I just want Elle to catch him because Elle is actually cool. So no, it doesn't work. So when Mia, the thing about Mia is that she's a bad character too, because it's like she's doing the things that it feels like, I don't have the context of the anime, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like she's doing the sort of things that anime Light might be doing, like tying up loose ends, like trying to cover their tracks, and the whole time, like, Netflix Light is just kind of whining about it, and it's not a good look for either of them, because Mia's character is paper thin, and it makes Light just seem like a coward. Like, he's the one that started this. Like, he just killed this bully in cold blood, just because he was a dick. And
even if what they wanted to do here was to flip the roles of Misa, who is the manga's Mia, and Light, so then Light takes the back seat and Misa takes the reins. It doesn't do that either, because without saying too much, Misa isn't an idiot, and she's not really a character, but she's also, like, you don't hate her the entire time. She's not an idiot. You're not just waiting for her to die because she sucks. And it still focuses entirely on Light. Like, I actually would be behind this if they had swapped the two of them. Had they let Mia take the reins after Light is a complete dumbass. Because, in a way, Misa's character opens in a similar way in the manga, but then falls back. In this, it sticks with it, and it sucks. It sucks. That's all. I'm just gonna, honestly, that's all I'm gonna say a lot of this time is just that it sucks, because it sucks, and I'm upset.
Well, there's sort of another problem with this idea of switching the roles of Light and Mia, Light and Misa, and that's partially to do with the fact that this film has no idea what it's doing with its themes, or if it does know what it's doing, it decided on a very stupid thing to do from the outset. And part of this is just sort of weird and muddled in general. If you're looking for it, you can see there's kind of this weird underpinning about American like interventionism and like foreign policy. I can't take credit for this because I most recently watched, kind of in preparation, I was watching Mother's Basement's defense of this movie, actually. It's an interesting video, even if I don't really agree with the conclusion. We'll link it. But he brings up in that video that there's this subtext about Light using his power to take out like ISIS leaders and North Korean generals and like stuff, people who are considered the bad guys by like
all with explosions, specifically their head exploding, which
Yeah.
I know isn't really relevant to what you're saying right now, but everyone's head explodes in this movie and it's really distracting.
I love it. I love that that's something the movie's got going on. Anyway,
But, like, it's the only way people die. Their head explodes.
well, they gotta put that budget somewhere. Anyway, so the heads explode, but everyone whose head explodes, to create this Kira cult, is like an enemy of America, an enemy of the American military, more specifically. And you can see how this exists. It's definitely present in the movie, but very underdeveloped, because after that it very swiftly moves into like the cat and mouse game between Light and L, and like doesn't really come back to it. So not only is it really underdeveloped, but I think it's just the wrong metaphor. It's just the wrong metaphor to use when you're making an American Death Note. Because let's not beat around the bush. If Light Turner were a real person, if Light Turner didn't have this Death Note, he would not be like a American military figure. He would be a school shooter. Like, that's the problem we have in violence. We have with violence here in America. I saw that someone was saying on Twitter, I wish I could remember who, but I saw that like the reason that they shouldn't make an American Death Note is because America has such a problem with young white men killing people over their personal grievances. And I disagree, not with that assessment, but I think that's precisely why you make an American Death Note, because that character psychology, that idea that like this character is going to take matters into his own hands and punish the people he thinks deserves it. That's a frightening psychology that is, unfortunately, one that shows up in the news all too often. Like, Light would be the guy with a manifesto on his hard drive. And the film doesn't seem to get that, which makes it all the weirder that it keeps asking us to sympathize him and worry about whether he's going to reject his humanity or not. Like, no, he already rejected his humanity. Like, we see this in the news all the time. So the fact that there's this tone deafness about the production. I saw that word to describe it on Twitter too, and I kind of wish I'd been compiling these so I could properly give credit. But there's definitely this tone deafness because the film actually wants us to kind of pin the blame on Mia. And not to say that, like, violence is never committed by women, that, you know, women don't do violent things. Not at all. Like, that's not true. But if we're talking about this specific problem in this specific moment in American society, it is a male problem. And so switching just on like a logical level, on making it feel real, switching Light and Misa's roles doesn't really make sense on a logical level. But even worse is the way the film actually plays out, in that, like, it frames Light's killings as like a potentially noble crusade, but then, you know, Mia comes along and tempts him. Like, it tries to paint her as like this Eve, like, that, you know, Ryuk keeps eating all those apples. It tries to make that connection with like Eve and the fall of man or whatever. Very explicit. And at best that is stupid. At best that is dumb. At worst, it's very, like, deeply misogynistic. And it's just wrong. It's just a complete misreading of society right now. And it completely undermines the reason to make an American Death Note as something other than just, like, a schlocky Final Destination knockoff, you know?
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to, as an article from, I believe, Film School Rejects, which I will also post below, was talking about who is this movie made for. And there are a couple of names for it. There's Death Note fans, and I mean, I got some enjoyment out of it. It's not great. New people to the series are probably going to be a little off-put by just the weird tone deafness to it. Like, it'll be, as Jackson said, it's a great introduction to the rest of it, but it's not a good representation of what Death Note is. Teen romance fans is the one that I really want to talk about, especially in light of what you were saying, because there is that air, as I said, it's kind of like almost Twilight-esque, except in this one, they play Mia as the pure villain and is treated so horribly throughout it as some just terrible woman, and the woman is the fault for everything going wrong, and if she had just stayed out of this, it would have been fine. And it's awful. Her character gets such a terrible rap. She's introduced immediately as a psychopath. We get like half a second of her trying to save some kid from being bullied or something, but after that, she's just a psychopath. She's totally interested in this thing that can kill people, which...
Not only that, sorry to cut you off for just a second, but I wanted to also add that, like, not just a psychopath, but even that introduction of her, like, trying to stop, like, a bully or whatever is immediately undercut by the fact that, like, she betrays Light in the text. Like,
yeah, she lies to him.
Yep. So it's even worse, like, right off the bat, like...
Oh, I see. No, that was a film technique called foreshadowing.
Oh, very, very clever of the makers of this very clever film.
That's deep, man. Wow. Ooh. Mine's blown a little bit right here.
So yeah, Mia was bad.
Speaking of tone shifts.
All right, yeah. You can get back to your original point however you want. I'll stop.
Oh my god. Yeah. So basically what I'm getting at here is that this movie ends up not being really for anyone in my eyes, because every attempt it makes at being for something, it kind of fails, because it's thematically all over the place. The characters are unlikable. The romance is bizarre. It's misogynistic. Willem Dafoe's only in it for a minute and a half. I want more Willem Dafoe. Where's my Dafoe? So it really whiffs on whatever the fuck it was trying to do. And as Jackson said, it would have been it could have been an interesting, compelling look at American society and the nature of American school shooters had we taken this as an American Death Note. There's something to be done with that. There's something to be said in that light, no pun intended. It would have been really compelling to have not just been like, let's make Death Note again, but worse in all the right ways. Just make it terrible. And instead, take those original ideas that end up being awful in this and like put good original ideas in it. I'm not against changing to take the base of something and build something new off of it, which is what Marvel has been doing successfully for years at this point. They took a base and they have an incredible empire, and most of those movies are really good. They're an enjoyable 2 hours to be dead in a theater. In comparison, this takes the base and then takes like 4 of the 6 main tenets of Death Note and then splices in 2 random pillars that don't really fit with the rest of it, and it just collapses under its own weight because, unfortunately, all those pillars are made of sand, doesn't stand up very well, and just fucking fails. It doesn't work, and there is such a good possibility of there being something interesting underlying, and it's not there. There's no thematic resolution to any of it. I left feeling like I did just turn my brain off for an hour and a half and laughed at a movie, which was never what Death Note was about. It was always supposed to be something to think about and to enjoy and feel shitty about enjoying, but also kind of question your worldview and wonder who was right, who was doing the right thing. Is this bad for the good reasons? Is this good for the bad reasons? It was meant to be something, and this is nothing. It is literally nothing other than schlock, which I'm fine with if it wasn't Death Note. With that said, though, I want to bring up one extra thing, which I'm going to do my best to link down below as well, which is I want to talk about Death Note Chapter 0.
Death Note Chapter 0, what is this?
So, Chapter 0 was, from what I understand, kind of like what Death Note itself is based off of. Originally, Death Note was picked up by a young boy. And Ryuk shows up there, and there's some other small differences. I don't believe it's actually canonical because they bring in something called like the Death Eraser and things like that, which are goofy and wouldn't really fit very well in the Death Note universe.
So it's more like a prototype, kind of like how they made that season of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where like it's based off the manga where he's a psychopath and burns people alive, but that wasn't actually like canon to that card game version everyone knows.
Yes, exactly. It is burning people alive Yu-Gi-Oh! But it is a 5-year-old who essentially, or not a 5-year-old, but a young male child in Japan who essentially becomes a school shooter and kills people who are bad in his class and people he doesn't like. And it is a single chapter, and it feels, as you've been talking about this movie, it really kept resonating with me, is that this chapter feels so much like the movie because it is immature. It is kind of working to come onto its own but isn't there yet. It is all about just someone who doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. It could have, it's the type of thing that could be something, and it does become something. It becomes Death Note, as I said, an incredible piece of work. This Chapter 0 is just not representative of what Death Note actually is, much like this movie. As I said, it just feels very, it's people killing because it's what they like. Hey, I can do this now. I'm gonna kill these people who were bad in my school because they hurt me. And it's the kid freaking the fuck out when he sees Ryuk for the first time. And there are so many lines that tie Death Note Chapter 0 to Death Note the movie. It's kind of absurd. And it really makes me wonder whether they read Death Note or whether they read Death Note Chapter 0.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because it also sort of got into the other aspect that I was thinking of that the movie also touches on in terms of American society and does it a little better, but doesn't go enough with it. Because thinking about my comparison, especially in light of like the Chapter 0, like a one chapter thing, it feels like maybe you would only get so far with that metaphor. You know, it's maybe a little bit too basic. Because from what I've been told, the Death Note, the original, is in part like an examination of the idea of justice and like what is justice and who gets to deliver it, which again feeds into that kind of those sick, twisted mass shooter ideas. But it also feels like America has another problem in addition to that this movie actually does address, but does so in a weird way. Particularly, I'm talking about when the police detectives all come out as pro Kira. There's kind of the cult of Kira, which is weird. That feels like it's introduced only so they can have Light bailed out at the end when, after an absurd chase sequence with L, one of his followers like clubs L over the head. It feels like a bit of a cop-out, not really of anything of weight, because it doesn't come up in most of the movie. But the one detail is that Light's police officer dad is having trouble with this case because the rest of the officers are all for the criminals just like being put down. Like, it makes their jobs easier. It just justice is being delivered. All the bad people are going away, and that's also a very American idea that's supported by kind of our awful institutions. If you also look at the news, the other violence problem we have, well, we have lots of problems with violence, but another big violence problem we have is police shootings, and that also very much gets into those ideas of who gets to decide justice, who is above the law, when does the law matter, and it feels like that's a pretty natural step for this movie to take, but then the fact that it handles Elle's character, who is supposed to be this representative of the law, like the character who's not going to overstep the bounds of his authority or anything like that. He's not going to act like basically the corrupt police officers. The handling of that character, as much as I enjoyed the performance, also feels pretty weak in this light. When he starts chasing Light around with a gun, specifically the gun from Blade Runner, you were saying?
Yes, from what I can tell, the gun is the the PKD special from Blade Runner, which I think is cool, but like, it doesn't matter. It's just cool. It's just something I noticed.
I mean, it's also silly that like this is a realistic setting, and then Elle's pulling out. Elle's strange because the only thing in this movie that feels like an anime, like he's got his weird mannerisms and his like childhood investigator training school in like ruins, and he's got like this handler. He feels very anime, and it's very out of place considering everyone else just acts like a Final Destination character, or like the cop dad reminded me of Twilight's cop dad a bit.
Oh yeah, no, he even kind of looked like Twilight cop dad.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in these teen movies, like, cop dad only serves one purpose. Anyway, point is, I think the movie undercuts that quite a bit by engaging in a personal pet peeve trope of mine, and that's the ambiguous ending that doesn't serve a real thematic purpose, and in fact goes against the thematic purpose in this case. So the end of the movie, Elle's at the end of his rope. He's being kind of disgraced by these police officers. Elle has, a justice planned, all according to Kikaku. And not Elle. And they're such, they begin with the same letter.
I know.
Light has succeeded with his plans. And Elle has the page of the Death Note that Mia used to start fucking things up. And there's some ambiguity about whether he's, he kind of has deduced how it works. He doesn't decide. He's looking like he's gonna try to decide whether he's gonna write Light's name with it. Ugh. And
say that 3 times fast.
No, exactly. And the movie just ends. We don't see Light dying. It just ends with Ryuk going, "Humans are so interesting." And that is a huge cop-out, huge disservice, because that decision about whether or not, like, Elle keeps to those ideals is, like, the central character. Like, we don't get any character resolution on that. It's not, like, it exists solely as, like, trying to be, like, an Inception top moment. But it's stupid, and I hate that trope so much, where they just leave the ending open as being like, oh, it'll be for people to discuss, be open to interpretation. But that means the movie then has, like, it already didn't have almost any thematic meaning, but what little thematic meaning it did have is just completely undercut by this. We don't see whether the authority figure, like, sticks true to his ideals and, like, upholds justice as it's meant to be seen or not. We don't know, and that drives me crazy.
Yeah, like, it's one thing to have an ambiguous ending. All sorts of movies do it. Inception's a great one for it. The problem comes when it's a character arc being ambiguous. I am all for ambiguous endings. They don't bother me nearly as much, except in this situation where it is purely character driven, purely thematic. It is what the movie is entirely about, and it just like, that seems like it's gonna commit a little bit, and it might make some people upset. And we here at Netflix are trying to make a PG-13 movie where they say fuck a lot, and I don't want to upset them. And it sucks.
That's so strange because of all the head explosions. Like, if this were in theaters, this would be hard R. And that's why I don't get it. Like, they're already making many people mad by doing it. Just, like, have some sort of vision. Just commit. Just don't. And like, I wonder if it's because if they were wondering if they were going to get sequels. Again, I don't know, like, how much manga this corresponds to. Maybe they felt like there was some material left over to make a second one. But it was a hacky move. It leaves the only thing in the movie that was even kind of sort of working in terms of theme. Wasn't doing it very well, but it was there. And I can say that a lot more than, like, basically anything else. It was there and almost coherent. And then they just pissed it away.
Yeah, I mean, I, honest to God, have no idea if they were to do a second, what they would do. Because it would need to be something almost wholly original, because they pretty much pissed away everything that they could have taken from the source material in this as cheap 1-2 throwaways, and anything interesting would require totally new characters. So if they did continue this, it would need to be like completely new. And if this is any indication on how it was going to go, I don't know that I could trust them to make something new. It sucks. Like, it doesn't make sense. It sucks. Guys, it sucks.
It's bad. You should watch it.
Yeah, you should. It's bad. It's really bad. You should definitely watch it. Don't watch it if you like the original, or if you do, just understand that it's a piece of shit and it's a great schlock film, but that's about all you're going to get out of it.
Here's my suggestion if you watch the original. And maybe still want to enjoy it as a schlock film while still keeping your sanity. Find a way to make a drinking game of it. Take a shot every time Light does something stupid and enjoy your free trip to the hospital.
Enjoy your free trip to the hospital in the first 10 minutes. Jesus. We're trying to get people to enjoy this movie, not kill them.
Well, you know what I mean. If you're a Death Note fan, don't watch this sober.
Yeah, that's probably the best advice you can be given at this point. Or, hey, if you like Blade Runner, go check out his PKD special. That's pretty cool. Willem Dafoe's in it.
Oh, Willem Dafoe is in it, though. And
Willem Dafoe's in it.
His costume looks really good, actually. I like the way that looked.
I hated it.
Really?
Yes. Probably because I read the original, and to me, he looks terrifying in this. It felt like It, the movie.
Yeah.
And I never got a terrifying vibe from Ryuk previously. I got much more of a, he is what he is, not necessarily terrifying, but, not pretty by any means.
I see. Well,
so
I liked him as a ghoulie. I like watching him cackle and go like, I like the girl more because she's a murderer. It's great.
Spot on impression. You really knocked it out of the park there.
Yeah, you know what? I do my best.
With that though, I think we've kind of we've hit what we wanted to say. Go get drunk and watch this, I guess. That's all I got for you. I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. I'm on Twitch Wednesdays and Sundays. Twitch.tv/helpless_Skippy.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me over on Twitter at JacksonJKeller. I talk about anime a lot, and we'll probably be spending some time trying to heal Sean's broken soul on there. So, you can watch that.
You can also find our podcast on Twitter. We are BADH_cast. We mainly tweet about what's coming up next. We'll tweet about schedule changes since we are on Thursdays now, but we shouldn't be changing that anytime soon. Also, as always, thank you to Lords of the Highway for the use of our theme song. It is Suicide Alternate Take off the album High Octane Low Expectations. It's a great album. They're a great band. Go listen to them, support them, tell them you love them. You should. They're good. I believe next up we are doing the new movie It.
Hey, speaking of It.
Exactly. We're going to keep this train running. 2001, we're kind of putting on hold for right now. We have it recorded, but it'll come out further down the line. I'm really proud of that episode, so expect it at some point, but we got more pressing things to get out. With that, I'm going to leave you with a quote from the death god Ryuk. I feel this quote does a nice job of showing why this movie is really bad at appealing to Death Note fans and also really schlocky and shitty. Enjoy!
Rule 28. Each death must be physically possible, so no shark attacks while someone's on the toilet. As much as I love that idea.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go